Hi everyone, I'm Angie Colarusso and this is Shane Kleiner. We're from Second Chance Wildlife Center. We can't be here in person with you today because of COVID regulations, so we're doing the next best thing, which is a virtual camp, and we're thrilled to be able to do this. So we're going to introduce you to some of our animals today. This is Priscilla, our adult opossum, and most opossums get a bad rap just because of the way they look. They look a little bit scary and prehistoric, and if you look at her face, she looks like she's been around for a long time, like she's an antique, kind of dinosaur-like. That's because she walked the earth with the dinosaur.
Actually, the possum has been around for 60 to 90 million years, which means, as Angie said, they were here during the time of the dinosaur. They really haven't changed much since that time, and actually, there are only marsupial in North America. Most time, people are very scared of these guys because of the 50 teeth that they have. We as adults have only 32 teeth, so 50 teeth is a lot of teeth. They have this really long nose, which means excellent sense of smell. Their eyes are fairly small, which means they don't really see that well, and their ears are very sensitive to the cold because they never were up in the northern part of the United States until only a few hundred years. The other thing that makes them very interesting is this long prehensile tail. These guys are able to use that tail as another arm. The babies, they can actually hang from their tail, but the adults can only use them to gather things and also to make sure that they're able to hold on as they're climbing trees and those types of things. The other thing that's pretty interesting about these guys is if you look at the back foot, their back foot actually has a thumb, just like we have it. And of course, she's not going to cooperate with me, but if you can see right there, there is the opposable thumb, which means they can grasp things just like our hand can do. But they also have these very long claws. They're almost like spikes. And what they do is they utilize those claws in order to be able to capture mice, small animals. They also will eat just about anything. They're one of those animals that are nocturnal, which are always found out at nighttime, but they can be found during the day, especially when we're dealing with when they're trying to feed their young and those types of things. So even though they're nocturnal, which means night, they can be found out during the day.
So these guys have a very short lifespan in the wild. They may only live 2 to 4 years. Their body actually breaks down and falls apart as they get a little bit older. They have litter of babies in the spring and then a litter of babies very late summer and into the fall. Now, when the babies are born, one little baby possum would cover Lincoln's head on a penny. What they'll do is they'll move to the pouch from the birth canal and they try to reach a nipple in the pouch. And there's 13 nipples that are available. There could be as many as 21 baby opossums born, but only 13 will be able to latch onto a nipple and survive. They suckle, and then at 90 days, their eyes open, their mouth is open. They start to move on to mom's hair on the back and ride along with her. If you see an opossum hit by a car, make sure you check the pouch because those babies will just stay there. If they're very tiny, like this is called a pinky possum. Very, very small. These guys need to be tube fed. They need a stomach tube that goes down their throat to be fed. This is a difficult venture, so we send these off to Pocono Wildlife because I don't even work with these guys. It's very, very frustrating. It's extremely difficult to be able to feed them. We usually get our possums when they're a little bit bigger. We're going to show you in a minute. These guys are immune to the bite of a rattlesnake. Rattlesnake venom doesn't affect them because rattlesnakes were part of their diet and still are. Her body temp is about 93 degrees. She feels cooler to me. She will drool, she'll growl, she'll hiss, but she's more afraid of you than you are of her. Her mouth will snap closed and then quickly snap open and let your hand back out. So if you would encounter an opossum, just simply walk away. These guys can't see well. They rely on their sense of smell. So if they can't see you or can't smell you very much, they're going to not be as excited. They're not going to definitely come after you and charge you. They're low on the list for rabies because of a low body temperature. They're actually low for very many diseases in Pennsylvania. Good animal to have around. One single opossum can eat about 5,000 to 8,000 ticks in a season. So these guys can stay in my yard anytime.
And one of the things that happens is if you happen to come across a possum, one of the things they will do is they will actually play dead. So what they will do is they'll go on their side, their eyes will bulge, their tongue will hang out, they'll start to drool, and they will be able to stay in that state until the danger is gone. So as the danger goes away, their eyes open, because the way predators go after prey is if they run or they show life, they will actually attack that animal. So these guys have adapted over the years to be able to play dead. It's not able to be chased after, and it makes it great opportunities for these guys to still survive.
So what we have here is a baby possum or a juvenile possum, which is just over 200 grams. These guys can hang from their tail to some degree. Their tail is all cartilage, so they can bend it around very well. When they're adults, that cartilage turns to bone. These guys are not ready to be out on their own because they need to be 13 inches from the tip of the nose to the base of the tail, which this one is not. So it wouldn't survive too well out there, and it would fall prey to different predators at night. So even possums this size that are in your yard and that show up do need help. So they wouldn't be hanging on mom's hair. They probably would be hanging around mom yet. So if you do see a single possum like this hanging around, it does need some help.
Now this guy is a very small possum. This one's just over probably about 95 to 100 days old. Even though they're that old, they're not fully grown. Like Angie said, when they're real small, when they're very small, they aren't able to be on their own. But this guy, this size, and if you look at that nice little smile she's got going on for you, that's how they get scared, but they'll open that mouth and show those teeth. But these guys will stay with mom. This one is not able to be on its own, and it does need a wildlife rehabilitation center in order to survive.
So without stopping and checking that pouch on the mom possum, those babies just know the comfort of that mother's pouch and they will stay there. Another car will come along and they will squish them. So we ask you to please stop, check. You know, if they're alive live possums in there, whether pinky or not, call a wildlife center, get them to a wildlife rehabilitator, and this way they can be saved. So we're going to move on to our next animal now, which is the woodchuck. And I apologize for my back during this video. It's a little difficult doing it this way. And this is Flapjack. Woodchucks are famous for eating people's gardens, digging holes in farmers' fields, and then animals break their legs when they step into those holes. Or people will get mad because they plant their vegetables and then the woodchuck climbs a 3-foot or 4-foot fence, goes in and eats all their lettuce. But can you blame her? If the mainstay of her diet is clover and dandelion and you just planted green beans and lettuce, I mean, I need a change every now and then in what I eat, and I don't blame her for needing a change too.
As you can see, they have a fairly big nose. The eyes are fairly small for the size of their head, and also their ears are fairly small as well. Which means their sense of smell is their dominant sense. They have big claws, as you can see in the front. They're almost like a pencil, the end of a pencil that's been dulled. They're excellent diggers. And they're also, if you look at the front teeth, those front teeth are made for chewing. So they're vegetarians. Now, Angie's got a picture, a skull here of a groundhog. If you notice, those teeth are very long. So trying to pick up a groundhog is not a good idea. Groundhogs are also called whistle pigs. They're also called woodchucks. So woodchucks, whistle pigs, and groundhogs is all the same animal. The reason they're called a woodchuck is because, I don't know, because I've been around groundhogs all my life and never saw one throw a piece of wood at me yet. They are called whistle pigs because when they're scared, they go into their hole, they lift their head up, and they start. As you can see, she's starting to pay attention, because that is the threat signal that somebody's around or some threat is around. They're also called the groundhog because they actually do eat gravel in order to help in their digestion. They are vegetarians, so they eat all vegetables such as grasses, forbs, those types of things in order to survive. And the other thing that's really interesting about the groundhog is they are one of our only hibernators in Pennsylvania, which means they go into a deep sleep during the wintertime. Their heart rate slows to 2 beats per minute, and their respiration goes to 5 respirations, which means breaths per minute. So they almost look dead when you see them when they're in that state. But we're a very famous animal because of Groundhog's Day, February 2nd. That is when these guys actually go out to mate. During the time of hibernation, the female starts to put off this real strong smell. Almost smells like bad cabbage or tobacco or something like that. And what it does is it allows the male to find her. So even though we think it stinks, it's like Chanel #9 for those guys. So she will actually be found by the male. Mating will occur. The male will go back into her hibernated state. And then right around the April, May time of the year, you may start seeing the babies coming out of their burrow. So they're pretty interesting animals, a lot of times misunderstood, but they're a real neat animal to be able to observe.
Now, if you see her long claws, if we were to put her out in the grass or the dirt, dirt would be flying and she would make a hole underground because that's where they live. The den of a woodchuck has several entrances and exits so they can get away from predators. Rabbits and other animals that are being chased sometimes will dive down into those holes because these guys are veggie eaters. They're not meat eaters. So they would not take advantage of a rabbit diving down into the hole. That wouldn't be an animal that they would eat.
Yeah, but most of their holes are used by other animals. So even the fox, the skunk, all those animals will utilize the holes that these guys dig in order to survive.
So these guys are rodents, so that means that their teeth grow out their whole lifetime. So they need to chew and gnaw on different things in order to keep their teeth maintained and at a certain length, or the teeth will actually start growing up into the head and cause a problem.
One of the things we do have to worry about the groundhog, though, is they are a rabies carrier, which means they are able to pass the rabies on more dominantly to other things when they have rabies than in most of our other animals. Their temperature is actually up above 100 degrees, which is prime for being able to carry the rabies virus and pass it along. The next one we're going to be coming up with is a nice animal that most people are afraid of, also nocturnal in nature. And the first thing people think of, pardon my back.
Whoops. I'll get the newspaper off again. Whoops, Ella, please give it up. There we go.
Look at that face. Isn't she cute? This is Ella. She is the striped skunk of Pennsylvania. So you notice very, very small eyes, which means they don't see very well. Matter of fact, when I put her down, she walks around. She'll actually walk right into the legs of a table or a chair. Ears are very small, but look at the size of that nose. You would think an animal that smells this bad when they get excited would not have that good a sense of smell. But what's different between this guy and all the other animals is what's located back here. There is the scent glands located right by the rectum. If you look at the face of a clock, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, that is where they have two glands or nozzles that come out from the animal itself, and that's what makes that stinky smell. The gland itself is only about the size of a grape. Angie has one right here, if you want to get a little closer. If you notice,
like a little grape with
on
a
this
nozzle
size,
attached.
that little nozzle is what carries that terrible smell. It's a sulfur type of compound, so what they use that for is to make sure that if they are threatened, that's what they use to defend themselves. They have excellent teeth on these guys, about 3/4 of an inch. So if you're bit by one, not a pleasant thing to do. But normally people don't get that close. So what happens is normally your pet dog goes into the backyard at nighttime, finds Mrs. Skunk running around. What happens is she'll give a warning. She'll stomp her feet on the ground. These feet in front will stomp on the ground and she'll almost do a headstand. What she's doing is warning that I'm scared, I want you to back away. If you don't listen to that the first time, she'll start to turn her body in a U shape. She'll be looking right at you. Her tail will be up. At that point, you better be watching yourself because she's ready to spray. What she does, right next to those glands are all these muscles that actually squeeze that gland and expel that smell or that scent gland or the spray at your face. What they're doing is they're looking at your silhouette. So they're looking at that high part of the body. What's located there? Your eyes and your nose. If you get that spray in your eyes, it burns like someone just sprayed you with pepper spray. Or, of course, that smell is not that great either. So what happens is the dog comes up, gets sprayed, runs to your back door, scratches on the door. What's the first thing you do? You open up the door. Dog comes in, finds the best carpet in the house, and rolls around until she gets a scent all over the house before you even know what happened. So she's going to do what she got to do in order to survive.
So these guys have very sharp claws, as you can see. known for digging. Skunks use dens. They're very lazy. They would rather take up a woodchuck den than they would to build their own den. They live under sheds. They can live in rural areas. They can live in country areas, and they do just fine there. With their poor eyesight, they cannot see well, so they get hit at night by cars. So normally about May, early June are a lot of baby skunks. That's when they're born. That's why you'll smell more skunk spray in February, because that's mating season. They only come into a heat cycle for about 24 hours. So if they're not bred in that time, they don't have any babies. When the baby skunks are born, they're born pink, blind, and hairless. Very, very small, just like this. Pink, blind, and hairless. The size of my thumb, and it takes them about 4 weeks before their eyes are open. At 2 weeks, baby skunks can spray. When mom gets excited, they're right clued into that, and they can spray. So the myth about baby skunks not being able to spray till they're 3-4 months old is definitely a myth, because we've witnessed it. We normally like to get our baby skunks in when they're this size. We call these infant skunks. And I know this is probably a little bit hard to see. They're smaller than your fist. What happens is they're following mom. She can't count. If mom gets nervous or mom gets excited, she decides to run into her den or try to run away. She can't count how many babies she has. She may leave one behind. When they're this tiny, just remember, size of a fist, they need help. You don't want to touch these guys because they're a rabies vector species. Simply open a carrier, put some food inside there, let the skunk go in and shut the door. And then call a wildlife center, because they're definitely going to need to go to a wildlife center.
And as I said before, here is the skull of a pretty much fully grown skunk. Check out the teeth on that. If you are to get bit by that, it is not a pleasant experience. What they do is they will actually hang on. They grab a hold, they'll hang on. Angie's had been bitten already with them, and they've stayed on for 20 minutes. You actually have to pry their mouth open in order to get them out. So wildlife are meant to be observed from a distance. If you do have one that is injured or has a problem, make sure you know what you're doing, or call someone who knows what they're doing before you try to attempt to work with those animals. Because it is illegal in Pennsylvania to work with wildlife without a permit or a license.
So we're going to talk about baby raccoons and raccoons. Raccoons are noted for their mask, like a burglar, and their striped tail. Now, this guy doesn't have that much of a striped tail because he's on the young side yet. Merida, who we usually use for our programs, is not in a good mood these days, and we can't really handle her. The heat bothers her, although she's inside. So something spooked her, so we decided to use Whoop today. This is Whoop. And Whoop will be released in the fall. So these guys are great climbers. If we were to put him in a tree, he'd be up there in no time. But when we start out with baby raccoons here, they start very small. Shane's going to show you where we start out at. Can you imagine?
This is a baby raccoon. They are only about the size of a kitten when they're first born. So their eyes are closed, their ears are flapped shut, they can't fend for themselves, they rely totally on mom in order to survive.
So when you see an orphan baby raccoon, or a raccoon very small, like he was, half of his size, half of his body, kind of like two of his heads, that's the size he was. He needs help. He wasn't going to survive by himself. He would be taken by predators. He was still nursing. There was no way he was going to survive without help. These guys like to wash their food, but the reason they wash their food is because it accentuates the scent gland, or the saliva glands in their mouth. So it actually makes the saliva flow to their mouth. Kind of like when we think of a really good food and our mouth almost waters. Well, by them dunking their hands in water, it does make their mouth salivate, make their mouth water, and then they want to eat the food even more. So they have hands like you and I. So sometimes at the Wildlife Center, we need to put on all types of latches for raccoons, because look at those fingers. They're about 1.5 times the size of our fingers. And they have 5 of them, and they use their little hands just like we do.
They're almost like a 2-year-old that can climb curtains, okay? They get into anything. Where we got Merida, for instance, the individual bought her as a pet. I would not recommend a raccoon for a pet, because what happened was she was at nighttime flushing the toilet, turning on the water, tearing up the curtains. They were tearing drywall off the wall and pulling up the carpet in the house. So those animals are not meant to be pets. Unless you're using them for education and those types of things, or know what you're doing, would not recommend it. So also,
these guys.
This is the skull of a raccoon. Check out the size of the teeth on there. They are high on the rabies list, which means they are able to pass that rabies virus along. They also carry a worm that can be deadly to your pets and stuff. It's called
Raccoon roundworm.
roundworm or
Bacillus ascaris procyon. So what happens is the mothers give birth and those babies nurse from the mom. They get those worm eggs on their fur. So every baby raccoon that comes into our wildlife center needs to have a bath to wash off those worm eggs and then needs to be wormed every month. So cute animal, but you don't want to mess with them. But if you find one very tiny, you can't leave it outside. Temperature will drop in their body, and they will be taken by a predator like an owl at night or a hawk during the day. And that's generally how most of our baby raccoons come to us, is because someone found an orphan baby raccoon in their backyard.
Okay, well, hey, we really thank you guys for allowing us to be here for you and being able to be part of your virtual camp.
And I hope you learned something today. And any questions, we have a website, secondchancewildlifecenter.org. Just shoot us an email and we'd be glad to answer everything.
And if you want to see some of our live programs that we did for Pennsylvania Outdoor Life, you can go on their website at WNEP.org at .com at Pennsylvania Outdoor Life.
And just punch in Second Chance Wildlife Center and you can see several of our programs that we've done over the years.
You guys have a great one. It's great to be able to be here with you. Bye.